Welcome back to Breakfast Central. Now let's share what the front pages of the papers are saying. We're joined by Uade Ahime. Good to have you always.
Good morning, happy everyone. Great to be here.
Great to have you here. Okay, let's get straight into the papers. We're beginning with our first paper this morning, the Daily Independent newspaper. On the front page of the Daily Independent, governors back tax reform bills, reject increase in VAT, endorse revised VAT sharing formula, says it ensures equitable distribution of resources. Pengasan links high fuel price to FX volatility. Alleged 12.3 billion naira fraud. EFCC to arraign Otudeko, ex-First Bank MD Onosonya. Wow. Wike revokes Uzodinma, Diri, Abe, 565 others and plots of land in Abuja. It revokes here. Wike has revoked their plot of land. Yeah. Third mainland bridge safe, federal government assures Nigerians. National Assembly considers exempting Nigeria police from envelope budgeting system. Nigeria's inflation will start moderating from January, analysts say. 2025 budget, Senate will ensure every naira spent touches lives of Nigerians, says Akpabio. In other news, Nigerians will all receive prayers in their emails. Rivers PDP crisis, Ewo threatens to sanction Wike others over anti-party activities. I laugh. And that's all on the front page of the Daily Independent. Let's move on to the Punch newspaper.
On the Punch this morning, Dangote Refinery projects 650,000 barrels per day in June as it plans crude import. Facility now producing 500,000 barrels per day as officials look beyond Nigeria to meet demand for product. Governors propose new VAT sharing formula, OK tax bills. Defense headquarters blames foreigners for renewed terror attacks. 12.3 billion naira fraud, EFCC to arraign Otudeko, ex-First Bank MD on Monday. The drama obviously is continuing, and in the First Bank, slash shareholders, slash other names that will not be mentioned, crisis. Pengasan projects petrol price hike as crude costs rises. Fubara, Wike camps clash as police occupy Rivers PDP secretariat. And also Okungad arrested for alleged defilement of 6-year-old. Sad story. Those are the major stories on the Punch newspapers this morning.
And now let's move on to the Daily Trust. On the Daily Trust, tax reforms make the big story again. Governors reject VAT hike, propose new sharing formula. Stop scrapping of TET fund, Naseni Nita. Families of Zamfara airstrike victims demand compensation. Israel kills 75 Palestinians amidst ceasefire deal. Come on. Presidency to Sanusi, don't undermine our reforms. Oil and gas, Lokbobiri assures of sustained collaboration. Truck kills 6 family members, 8 others in Benue. Abuja Kaduna Kano Road ready in 14 months, says federal government. And final story, 6 terrorists and 5 soldiers die in Sokoto gun drill. That's all on the Daily Trust. Let's go now to the Vanguard.
All right, final story, final paper this morning. On the Vanguard, tax bills, governors offer new formula for sharing VAT proceeds. VAT proceeds, how hardship drives some Nigerians to look for food in garbage. Influx of ISWAP, southern governors mobilize, activate regional security. Federal government to Emir Sanusi, we don't need your approval for Tinubu's laudable policies. And also crude oil price will dictate petrol pump costs, says Lokwobiri. A rowdy session in National Assembly as IGP presents 2025 budget. These are the major stories. I think we probably should start with the governors and the reaction to the tax reform, and of course rejecting the increment in value-added tax.
Well, so did they reject the increment? Yes, they rejected the new formula of 60% derivation and went back and then moved derivation from what it was, 20% to 30%. So just switch it and leave the 50% equitable distribution.
Yeah.
I don't know if the president will agree to that, but they've agreed to all other aspects of the tax bills in principle. I'm sure they will go back again and come back and come to an agreement at the end of the day. What I see, and this is my opinion, is 40% derivation, 30% for the other parts, equity and the other one. The thing about it is, I think they've been trying to do that, which is the Fiscal and Tax Committee trying to explain to all the stakeholders why and how it would work, which is something that should have been done at the initial stages. Because when you understand the way value-added tax works, then you would understand that it cuts across value addition from production right to the point of sale. The only thing is that people say it's a sales tax. Yes, it is a sales tax because it's collected at the point of sale. But it doesn't mean that people haven't created value along that line. And in understanding that makes it easier for you to know where it has been derived from and where it has been collected, which is something I think those in our profession, accounting and taxation, need to step back and start to do properly, rather than just say, oh, it was collected here and as such, this person owns all the value that has been added to a particular product, which is not the case. If you understand value-added tax very well, there's what you call the input VAT and the output VAT, and all those are all connotations that are used so that you know where the VAT came in or who created value at different points, so that you know where value was either derived and value was collected. So so I think this is the education that we really do require. I'm sure the president for now might agree to the 50-30-20, which is switching. The equalization has remained, it's always been 50, meaning that when it comes in, 50% is distributed based on equitably. And then I think 20% used to be derivation. Now they are saying, okay, let's do 30% derivation, 50% equitably. So maybe he might agree to that while we get some more, education on the importance of why derivation, I think, is, in my opinion, I think that's what the committee is saying is the best way or the best method to ensure that states, one, improve on the number of the ease of doing business, so more people can do business and generate business within those states and create more value in the short and long term. So that's how I look at it.
Well, we'll see. I mean, I also, or not just myself now, but a few people also questioned, if there were proper, communication lines between the Taiwo Oyedele, team and the Nigerian governors. Maybe. I
think we have stumbled on an interview where Taiwo Oyedele said he actually went to them. He's
been meeting with
he's been meeting with them before.
Even before this, he's met with different governors that I'm aware. He's had discussions with them on a number of issues relating to tax, not just from the federal perspective, but also from the state perspective. People tend to forget that where states create an enabling environment for investments to come into your state and generate and create new businesses and more businesses within the state and create employment within the state, there is a higher tendency for states to generate tax revenues from personal income tax, which is based on income that is paid to people who work for living within that state. Do you understand? And residents within that state. So if I'm resident in Lagos and I work, I pay my personal income tax in Lagos. If I'm resident in Ogun and I work in Lagos, my personal income tax goes to Ogun State. And we've seen that fight over so many years between Ogun State and Lagos State, with those who live just outside Lagos coming to work in Lagos, and it's become a bit clearer. And those are the things, in my own opinion, that states need to start to look at with all the, when you look at things like the decentralization of the electricity system, these are opportunities to create for new businesses to be created and come up within the state so that you can employ people who are resident there so that they can generate additional increased personal income taxes that would come into directly into the coffers of the state and so on. Small businesses that business enterprise and individuals all pay those kind of taxes and they are all state domiciled. So it's only limited liability companies that would pay company income tax that goes into the federal coffers. So these are the kind of things that state needs to start to look at and speak to the committee on how do we increase these opportunities within our states rather than this back and forth on sharing at the central level when you can easily increase personal income tax by just creating an enabling environment for more investments to go in things.
Okay.
So for instance, tackling insecurity.
I'm glad that you mentioned that because that's my next question.
For people to come and set up small businesses, business names, and things like that.
All right, let's talk about insecurity and what states might need to do. The Vanguard reports influx of ISWAP, southern governors mobilize and activate regional security. If you recall, Governor Seyi Makinde had raised the alarm that the terrorists and the bandits who were escaping onslaught in the northwest were fleeing to the southwest for refuge. So how important is this? The governor of Ogun State has announced that they are creating a platform to share intelligence amongst themselves to be able to help with fighting and to be adequately prepared for the influx of ISWAP into the southern region of the state, of the country.
So ISWAP now, this happened under Boko Haram. So what's so new about the fact that when you are fighting terrorism in one part, there's a tendency for those who escape to other parts. So what platform are you recreating that wasn't created when Boko Haram was being, during the real fight, the major fight, against Boko Haram that led to a lot of successes. You get, and you could see them. You could see some people who were, fleeing to different parts, and some of these are the people that they've gone to other parts in the north and set up, their own terrorist organizations in affiliation with other people and so on. And this is a usual occurrence all over the world when you're fighting terrorism. Those who move tend to move to places where they would have some form of safety in the short run before they can create a new haven. So if that's what has been happening, then if you are just about to set up the platform, isn't that late to share intelligence? Because it happened during the onslaught on Boko Haram, which is less than 10 years ago. So and that's laudable, but that system maybe it's already in place, because I believe that the exact word I read was activate. It's not something that we need to throw out into the because if the system has been in place, then it's just for you to work the system and ensure that governors are receiving the right intelligence, security organizations and machineries across the states are receiving the right intelligence from the different parts of the country, as it relates to them. But let's remember that security is central. So even if you have the military bases, the police, the naval bases, all these they work from a central point to work with the states, and so central intelligence will come. So those are the things that I think, in my own opinion, more security meetings within the state, so that once the governor is getting his daily briefs or his regular briefs, then they know how to deal with it within that space.
All right. Now talk, energy. Dangote Refinery projects 650,000 barrels per day in June as it plans crude import. Where do you think we are with regards Nigeria's petrol, sector, currently? And of course, if this is great news.
Well, I see it as another business transaction for Dangote. Great news. How? Yes, great news that Dangote is going to hit the 650,000 barrel mark by June. They say currently they are doing 500,000, which is ramped up from 50% in June when it started June last year, to almost 100%, which is great news. But if they are going to, but let's understand how refineries work. Refineries refine crude. So people either they get crude and refine, or those who sell products buy crude and bring it to refineries and refine and take away the products, and about 16 or 17 different kinds of products come out of crude. So whichever one is decided that based on the agreement is what you take away. So if Dangote also wants to buy crude and refine as a refinery, of course it's allowed, it's a business transaction, and you would evaluate that process into your overall cost of production and how much whatever products come out from it, whether it's petrol or diesel or jet or LPFO, you just name them. I said there are about 16 or 17 byproducts that come out of crude.
Yeah. So does this also point to a reduction in our reliance of petrol imports?
Does it? Not necessarily, because people will decide where you want to buy, and it's dependent on how much it's going to cost me to put it into the petrol stations. That's it, like I continue to say, it's a business.
Yeah.
It's a business model. So what's my model? If my model is to import, and I believe I can import, and I believe I can store, and I believe I can create, what's it called? Usually, what usually tends to happen is that many of the refineries have large capacities what you call blending facilities, that you're able to blend different grades of crude, products that come out of crude, and get into the specification for wherever it's needed to go. Nigeria has a specification, so does Ghana, so does every other country in the world. And refineries are continually working to ensure that when they refine products, because crude, all sorts of crude, the ones with high sulfur, the ones that come from the Middle East have high sulfur, but they sell, and they use them to create petroleum products and other byproducts that come out of it. We should just focus on running this business, as a business, in my own opinion, rather than continually playing the politics of whether we're giving Nigerians petrol or not. What happens to all the other 16 byproducts that come out of crude? Who speaks about them?
Yeah, we barely hear any
exactly
about,
diesel, jet. Dangote has been selling jet and diesel. People are buying. I've seen details and data of it selling since it started off with diesel and jet, actually before petrol. So nobody speaks about that. And these are the things we need to be speaking about, so that we also know how much of it is coming into the market and how much of the other byproducts that come out of crude is also coming into the Nigerian market.
All right. Also on the Punch, if you look at the top right corner of the Punch, I'm not sure how much you know of what might be going on with First Bank. It started with a couple of, maybe 2 weeks ago or so, some crisis between shareholders and Femi Otedola, and since then it just seems like there's been some ruckus going on. But on the Punch there it says 12.3 billion naira fraud, EFCC to arraign Otudeko, ex-First Bank MD, on Monday.
I didn't even know that EFCC was investigating Otudeko. If that's what the Punch says, well, let's wait till Monday and see whether they're going to be in court. And if they arraign them, we see some things on the pages of the newspapers, and then the next time we hear about it is, they didn't have all their documents that they needed to use to process it, or they've arraigned them and then they've been granted bail. So really, my legal friends will say, is in the territory of the courts.
Yeah.
So, what's happening between First Bank actually did put out a comprehensive statement on what the issues are or what they say the issues are, and so has the other party.
Yeah.
So it's in the corridors of the court. So let's leave it there.
Let's leave it there, like you said. Let's also look at the Zamfara family members. This is on the Daily Trust. Families of Zamfara airstrike victims demand compensation. I watched an interview with the governor where he was talking about, oh, this is not something that they planned for. Unfortunately, it's a mistake, and this and that. And we see these mistakes happen over and over again. So Nigerian citizens have become collateral damage. Where do we get to the point where we will now be able to say that firmly, excuse me, that we can see that firmly the ISR is being conducted, that there's adequate information? The argument is that these bandits have planted themselves in the midst of civilians, so it's almost impossible. So how do we get to the point where we have answers to these questions, or are we going to keep seeing more collateral damages?
And this is sad to say, but it's the reality of the world. We have a lot of these collateral damages because of the way in which terrorists, do you understand, carry out their activities. A lot of them live within the confines of where a number of the average citizens will live without even knowing that the person is a terrorist. Sometimes those in that area don't know because they provide either some form of what's it called, contribution to the economy that makes the economy that boosts the economy. But that's the reality. But my challenge is where mistakes are made and we refuse to accept that mistakes have been made and do the right thing, which is either compensate those who from their errors or from the mistakes that were made, became collateral damage. And this continued insistence on, oh, it was a mistake, it wasn't planned for. Nothing is ever planned for. Even things that are planned for sometimes don't go the way they are meant to go. So I think coming back to the basics of understanding that there is a system and there will be collateral damage, unfortunately, in the war against terrorism, but accepting the fact that, oh yes, based on intelligence, this is what we saw. If there has been an error or there were mistakes made and there were heavy casualties or civilian casualties, the question also will now be, were there any casualties of any known terrorists?
Casualties. I mean,
that's
I think the challenge many people have.
You now start to find out whether those errors could have been prevented.
Yeah.
Because you've seen terrorists strike against terrorist organizations or people, and of course there are collateral damage. But you hear that the head of Al Qaeda, was targeted and he was killed. Well, don't ever think that there were no civilian casualties, because sometimes they are where they live or where they stay or where they reside is where the bomb hits. The most important thing for those who carry out the attack is to ensure that they eliminate the target. But of course, there might be other people who might, who would come out as collateral damage, but they usually do acknowledge that.
Yeah, well, anyway, I think we need to end the conversation here. The battle continues, obviously. We celebrated Armed Forces Remembrance Day on Wednesday,
15th, yeah.
and so this week is mostly just to once again celebrate those who are putting their lives on the line to ensure Nigeria stays safe. On the Daily Trust, it says 6 terrorists and then 5 soldiers died in Sokoto Gondio. So as you celebrate the death of 6 terrorists, you also are mourning, losing 5 soldiers at the same time, which is very sad.
My sympathy goes out to their families.
Yeah, absolutely.